like to get started? Hello? Meeting come to order. Please. Thank you. Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting, special meeting of July 31st, 2014. Will the council members please introduce yourselves?
Dave Olson, Vice Chair. Chris Johnson, Secretary.
Laura Stein, Treasurer.
Lisa Ketchum, Chair, where's Dan? Aaron?
Aaron Kozlowska.
Dan's here somewhere. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
What?
Could I just also an overall question as to how this committee came about,
What the Midcoast Community Council is?
or how you came about here for this particular issue, or is this not a particular issue?
Midcoast Community Council is an elected advisory council representing Montero, Moss Beach, El Granado, Princeton, and Miramar, and advisory to the Board of Supervisors. So we help do outreach to the public and also synthesize your comments and help to amplify that voice of the Board of Supervisors. And so that's our role here tonight. Okay, so the first, let me explain that that we need the microphones for the TVs, so when the public wants to speak, you will need to come up to this microphone here. And the first item on our agenda is public comment, in which anyone may speak up to 2 minutes on any item not on the agenda. There will be time for public comment on the Highway 1 issue, but this is if you have some announcement or something else to say that's not on the agenda. Does anybody? Okay, well, I have one announcement to make. Sid?
I just wanted to look at the agenda before I said something. Should I go now?
Yeah.
Sid Young, Moss Beach. For all those that may not have noticed or been on the email alert, Camille Young just put out the most recent Big Wave thing. I'm sure you guys all know what Big Wave is, but if not, maybe Lisa will fill us in because she knows a lot. And the new agenda items out now with the county. Thank you.
Actually, that's what I was going to mention.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to slow your thunder there.
The environmental document for the Big Wave North Parcel alternative has been released for 30-day public review and comment. There's a hard copy at the, this is what it looks like. There's a hard copy at the Half Moon Bay Library, and this one will be at the Granada Sanitary District office, which is at 540 Alhambra in El Granada. There's, you can also view it online on the county website, and there is a link to that page on the MCC website homepage. That's midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. At the August 13th Midcoast Council meeting, that's our next meeting, county staff will make an informational overview presentation of the project and the environmental review document, and that will be at a special venue. It will be at the Pillar Ridge Community Center off of Airport Street, and please carpool.
What day?
August 13th. Okay, so our normal order of business is that we will have a presentation, then the council will ask questions of the presenters, then the public comment will be open, the public can come up and ask their questions, get the questions answered, and then we'll wrap it up. So the main item on our agenda tonight, this community workshop, is the status of design planning for Midcoast Highway 1 pedestrian crossings, raised medians, and left turn lanes. The project consultants will update the community on their direction and progress resulting from feedback received at the June 18 Highway 1 meeting in Montero. The desired outcome is that the community will receive the project update and get their questions answered. I should introduce Supervisor Horsley, and basically at this point I'm going to just turn the meeting over to all you guys.
Okay.
So,
first of all, you know, most of you are sitting way in the back, and there's a bunch of seats in the front. So if you're having trouble hearing us, I would suggest you move up. We actually won't ask you any questions, I promise. So if you, why don't you move up so you can hear it? My voice doesn't necessarily carry. Can you hear it? Oh, okay, well then, okay, but then don't, but I would recommend still, if you usually can see better. How this whole process started, it's actually started about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was some grants that we got, even before I was on the Board of Supervisors, and I'm Don Horsley, the district representative on the Board of Supervisors. But it started about 4 or 5 years ago with a couple of different grants where they did a lot of studies about what would make Highway 1 mobility superior to what it is today. And most of what I think was heard at the time, and I went to a couple of the sessions, actually a number of the sessions, we heard pretty loud and clear that people wanted safe crossings. They did, there's always I guess, differences of opinion in terms of speed. Some people like it to be faster, some people want it to be slower, some people want more trees, some people want less trees. So in any case, when we started looking for grants to be able to do things, essentially to have safe crossings across the highway. There were things like, in some of those studies, or some of those initial studies, there were things like roundabouts were talked about, and we pretty much eliminated those fairly early on because they were so controversial. They take a lot more property, basically, than currently is there. But we also heard that people wanted things like left turn lanes and acceleration lanes to be able to make turns. And at the same time of doing this study, we also are doing a traffic management study, but that's kind of a separate issue. We can talk a little bit about that. But in any case, what we focused on were safe crossings. So we had a public meeting not that long ago, maybe about a month ago, and most of what we came up with, people did not like. They essentially were crosswalks with a lot of lighting and flashing lights, things of that sort. So no one liked it. So we decided we better go back and find out what people do like. And one of the reasons we came up with those particular solutions really has to do with we have to figure out what really is possible. So, the highway does not belong to the county. The money that we get is not the county money. It's going to have to be grant money, transportation money, and ultimately it is the state of California, it's the state highway. So we're fortunate to have a representative for Caltrans here tonight. We did hear loud and clear that people want to have acceleration lanes or something at Cypress. I like to see ladies say, no. Maybe that's, what we're trying to do is find out, we know that Nicole said everybody has an opinion, but we know that we're not going to be able to solve or make everybody happy. We want to find something that the majority of people like and that achieves essentially that goal of some safe crossing. So we think that some of the things that we heard pretty loud and clear had to do with having center medians. And the reason for center medians is that you're able to cross one lane at a time instead of having to, nobody wants to stand on the center divider of a highway, but if you can have a center divider, that may be one of the potential solutions. So that's one of the things we would talk about this evening, and find out what it is that's possible. There are other things that we'll talk a little bit about. We are doing some speed surveys, at least the Caltrans is going to do that, to see what the average speed is, and frankly, we want to see if we can lower it. Not to 25 and not to 35, but to somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 45, because if you do that, then we have some potential. There are things that you can do that you cannot do if the speed is at 50. So like for example, if the speed limit is 50 and people are going 55, 60, you cannot, at the middle of the night, have a concrete divider because somebody's going to run into it. So we have to look at what's possible, what's safe, that's kind of what we're getting to tonight. So we're going to go through some slides. We will listen to what you have to say. We certainly want to have what the MCC has to say and what really is possible. And I also want to say this process is going to take a long time. So it's already been years, and first of all, doing all the things, these public outreach meetings that have taken a number of about 4 years. We did get some grants to do some additional public outreach and eventually eventual design. Once we come up with some designs that I would say the preponderance of people can support, then we'd have to go after additional grants to actually get that constructed. So that's kind of the reason, and that's the purpose of what we're here for tonight. So with that, Nick, maybe many of you know, Nicholas Calderon is our senior legislative aide. Sarah Christensen is a consultant that we've hired.
Yes, Roland Alia.
And Roland from, Roland Alvarez?
Alia.
Roland Alia
Alia.
from Caltrans. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and we'll have sort of an interactive process.
Okay, I'm gonna give my quick presentation. Uh-oh. Good timing here. All right. So thank you for having us back. At the last meeting, we got a lot of really good feedback. We read all your comment cards and heard all of the suggestions at the last meeting in June. And we'd like to fill you in on what we've done since then. We kind of went back to the drawing board on some of these alternatives. So I'm just going to get started here. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit about the project, introduce it for anyone who is not all that familiar with the project, talk about the project goals. We're going to go over the project scope, and Supervisor Horsley, he went over a lot of it, but we'll go into more specifics. We'll give you an update on where we're at with the study and what we've done since the last meeting to respond to some of the comments. Then we're going to show a conservative project schedule for this project moving forward. Thank you. And then we'll take questions. So the goals of this project really haven't changed. Is to provide safe access to the beaches, coastal areas, and local communities along Highway 1 within the project limits, which are from Grey Whale Cove to the north to Murata Road in the south. It's also to improve traffic along Highway 1, as well as provide at-grade pedestrian and bicycle crossings to the residents and visitors. So the scope of this project is really, we're evaluating the feasibility of early implementation, mobility, and safety improvements. So these are improvements that can be done in a shorter range amount of time. We're not looking at long-range improvements. It's really a short-range improvement type of project. So these types of improvements include at-grade pedestrian crossings, raised medians, and left turn pockets. So now I'll give a quick update on what we've done since the last community meeting. We had quite a few comments about raised medians. Where are the raised medians? And we did have some in the last round of alternatives that we proposed, but we went back to the drawing board now, and we're looking at them in a little bit more detail. Really, there's a lot of challenges with raised medians along Highway 1. The main one is that it requires widening of the highway.
Could you explain what a raised median is, please?
Sure. So it would be a curved median in the middle of the freeway, in between northbound and southbound 101, or Highway 1.
Not freeway.
Right, Highway.
Expressway.
Can I ask, is there a minimum width?
The minimum width is 6 feet.
Okay, thanks.
Could I just, a point of order here, we're gonna just let them make their presentation, and then we'll have questions afterwards.
That'd be great, thank you. Other challenges or requirements for raised medians are it requires street lighting and enhanced markings to increase the visibility. Like was mentioned earlier, we don't want anybody running into these raised medians in the middle of the night, so they have to be well lit. Also, they're not preferred when it's a high-speed facility. So I'll talk about specific speed limits within the corridor on my next slide, but they're not preferred when speed limits are 45 miles per hour or higher. But we do have a plan of attack for to address this issue, and that is that we requested a speed survey. Speed surveys are conducted every 5 to 7 years. And the way that they work is the survey's done and they take the 85th percentile speed and that determines your baseline speed limit. So 85% of the cars are driving, say, 45 miles per hour, and that's your baseline. The traffic engineer can then adjust the speed limit 5 miles per hour higher or 5 miles per hour lower. So there's a little bit of flexibility. So we've gone ahead and requested the speed survey, and Caltrans will be conducting that within the time frame of this study. So we'll get the results in time to incorporate into this study, which is great. So here are the community zones that we've requested the speed survey to be conducted. Montera, the posted speed is 45 miles per hour. Moss Beach just posted speed 50 miles per hour, as well as El Granada 50 miles per hour, and Miramar is 45 miles per hour. So some of the other improvements that we've looked at that are related to the raised medians are the at-grade pedestrian crossings with the pedestrian refuge in the median. So these would be in lieu of any flashing beacons or hybrid beacons. And it would allow pedestrians to cross one lane at a time. So there would be no need to stop traffic on Highway 1. You could just cross one direction at a time and take your time. So these are, they're pending the speed survey, but we will definitely be incorporating these as alternatives to the rapid rectangular flashing beacons and the hybrid beacons that we proposed at the last meeting. Other improvements that we've incorporated into this study include the acceleration lanes. So originally we were just looking at the left turn pockets, but now we've incorporated the acceleration lanes into the project. Traffic studies are ongoing, so we just obtained some counts, and we're looking at all the movements, and we're going to come up with a really good plan for some acceleration lanes. And I know there was a lot of feedback about acceleration lane at Cypress. So both the left turn pockets and acceleration lanes are being evaluated currently. Other features that we're looking at moving forward to respond to the comments, like I said, acceleration lanes, traffic studies are ongoing. We're also looking at technologies for lighting. I know there was a lot of concern about trespassing of light or light pollution, if you will. LED lighting, it's amazing what they can do with it these days. You can direct the lighting to be along the highway, which reduces the trespassing of light. There's also dimmable lights, so the street lighting can be dimmed during low traffic times or overnight. And then, like I mentioned earlier, pedestrian refuge in the median, those are being evaluated at the pedestrian crossings as well as the beacon alternative. So that was the update and the schedule. This is a conservative schedule. Where we're at now is the congestion and safety improvement feasibility study, which should finish early next year. And then we have several steps to go to get this project implemented. We have the project initiation, which is when we get Caltrans involved in the project, and that takes about 6 months to 12 months. We have the environmental studies that have to happen, a lot of technical studies, including if there's any impacts from the highway widening or visual impacts. We'll look at how many signs we have, how many lights we have, and we'll incorporate that into the visual impact analysis. So that's part of the environmental phase. Following that is the final design and then construction. So we have many more opportunities to put your input into this project. So these dates are obviously subject to change depending on a lot of factors, including the environmental impacts, the cost, and funding. So, just one last slide. The next steps for this study. We're going to get the results from the speed study in a few months, which we can incorporate into our feasibility study, and then in November we'll have a draft report. We're going to have another public workshop in January, around that time frame, and then wrap up our study a few months later in early 2015. So that's all we have for you today.
Thank you. So, well, we'll start here with questions from the council, and then we'll open that to the public. Laura, you want to start?
Sure. First of all, Supervisor Horsley, thank you for bringing this whole discussion back a second time after hearing people's concerns. I think we all appreciate that. I was very, very surprised to see the project schedule change such that we're really not looking until, I think, 2019 for this project to be done. One of the things that the council has done throughout planning for this project was to try to identify, the word always used, or the phrase was low-hanging fruit. And that was projects that would be easily attainable in a short period of time with the least amount of expense so that we could immediately begin to see the safety benefits. So it would be helpful for me to understand how this changed, and then secondly, are there any projects, or what projects could we do within a shorter period of time? Does my question make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So the alternatives that we presented back in June, those were, they did not require any widening, and the cost was much lower than what we're looking at now for the raised medians. So raised medians really changed the game with this project. There's two different delivery methods for our Caltrans projects. One is called a peer document. If it's less than a certain dollar amount, it's an expedited process. So likely would be cut that schedule that we showed earlier in half. This schedule would be for raised medians, which would be the other delivery method, which is the conventional process of going through the project initiation and then the project approval, environmental document phase, final design, and construction. So there's, you know, it depends on the impacts of the project, and it's still open, you know, the project initiation is going to look at both ranges, like the low range and the high range. And so it's really, it's still open. So.
Thank you, that helps. I wasn't aware of that. So what I hear you saying then is it's the actual construction of medians, you expected more like crosswalks in signs as opposed to medians, is that correct?
Yes, because the medians require the widening, and the widening, it really slows down the process.
I have two more questions. Can I
Sure.
do that? Okay. You mentioned highway widening, and I was really surprised to see that because you probably know that on the coast, or you have heard, that is a real hot button.
Yes.
Can you, I don't need you to go technically into it, but could we have some understanding of why the highway would need to be widened, considering the size of the width in Washington?
Okay, so raised medians, let's say they're 6 feet wide, you need a 2-foot inside shoulder, and then the 12-foot lane, and then an 8-foot outside shoulder, and the existing width of the freeway cannot accommodate that much width, so it's got to come from somewhere. I'm not sure. Because now there's no shoulder width required because there's no obstruction in the median. It's just a painted stripe. So when you add a median to 6 feet, there's also, you have to also include the 2 shoulders on the inside. So 2 feet and 2 feet. So it's really adding 10 feet.
Okay.
Minimum. And I could go back to, yeah.
Just add that we heard pretty clear that people did not want just a simple crosswalk with the flashing lights,
Right.
that they wanted center medians. And once
Yes.
you do center medians, that takes up, that forces the highway to get wider.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out here.
It
yes.
doesn't add lanes, it just makes it wider.
Mhm.
And that actually, we knew widening was a hot button initially, so that's why we didn't propose widening for the first round of alternatives, is because we wanted to really limit the impacts and provide what we thought would be preferred.
Mhm. Okay. We were told that Surfers Beach was taken out of the project scope. How was that decision made?
I made it. Well, the reason is that, that people, yeah, see, first of all, I didn't think anything would work there. We thought that, the thing is, if cars are parked on the east side, people are not gonna go to a particular crosswalk. They're gonna get out of the car and they're gonna walk across the highway. It didn't make any sense to put a crosswalk in one location. It does make sense to talk to GSD about, there's an area that people have an informal parking lot. It makes sense if we could talk to GSD, and we would do that at a later point, to see if we could, now I don't mean that would be asphalt, but if we could create that as, maybe, I don't know, crushed granite or something, but if you could have a more organized parking lot in that area that is an informal parking lot, then, and if you could funnel all the pedestrians to one area, then it does make sense to put a crosswalk then, but it does not make any sense unless you do the two in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, so it is still included in the study, but it's basically, the recommendation is to break it out as a separate project because there's so many other
Oh, I see.
components.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one is about accident statistics. And the reason I ask is it seems like it would help us to prioritize whatever projects that we are going to do. Do we have any statistics or interpretation of those?
Yeah, we do. We looked at accident data along the corridor, and actually, most of the pedestrian vehicular conflicts occurred at night or in dark hours. So that was definitely a finding that we are taking into consideration, and I don't have the detailed accident data in front of me, but there were a lot of broadside accidents through the, let's see.
Well, as
through
Christine's looking
through
at,
Moss Beach.
one of the reasons we looked at the particular areas for crossings, that's where most of the accidents occur. And one of the reasons, for example, on Virginia Street, we moved not the traffic light, but the light pole, we moved the light standard closer to the highway because we did have accidents there, pedestrian accidents. And so we wanted to light up that particular crosswalk there.
Oh, I see.
And that's why we did that.
Just one last comment, I'll be done, if you're okay with that. This is for Caltrans, if I may. What I'm wondering is, once the particular elements are determined or project pieces are determined, is there a model that can be done to look at the impact on traffic flow before you begin putting together whatever you've decided on?
Well, depend on the type of improvement that you're talking about. Definitely, you're going to put in a signal, yes, we can run it model and determine, what the operational impact.
We're not putting in signal.
Yes, I'm saying, putting a medium, a raised median is very difficult to assess, what the operational impact will be, but will be minimal, based on what we have learned from, over the years. Even though we would have difficulty really quantifying, but we know that the operational impact would be minimal.
Can I also add that, during when we were doing, all those traffic and mobility studies, and they talked about things like traffic, roundabouts and circles, and slowing the traffic down. It doesn't really slow you down getting to your destination. It does space out the traffic. So it's not as if you are all of a sudden lose 5 or 10 minutes. You really do not. I'm not going to say you don't lose a minute or two, but nobody's that's not that big of an inconvenience. But it's not. It really does not slow you down getting to your destination.
Thank
All
you.
right, Chris, it's your turn.
Fine.
I don't really have too many questions. One thing that Sarah mentioned was that Surfers Beach project is being recommended as a separate project, and I guess the larger question I have is, do we have another project scope or application or something in the works? Because we've talked about other things that haven't been included and are not going to be able to be done in this project because of the scope and the funding that's already in place. But if we're now recommending things that potentially were in this project for another project, I guess my question is, what's going on with that new project or that new project application or scope? Because it sounds like with what we're hearing about having to scale back, that there's going to be a lot of things that people are going to want in that new project. And when can anybody give me a status on that potential new project?
You're just talking about Surfers Beach.
I guess in the context of what Sarah said, she said that Surfers Beach specifically is another project. So I guess the question then is that being considered as a standalone separate project, or would that be considered as part of the transportation management plan, or a larger project that includes Surfers Beach and a couple other things?
Oh, that's a good question. It's actually probably part of the transportation management plan. One of the things we have to do is, because of our local coastal plans, we have to come up with transportation management plans. And part of what you know, I haven't seen the results yet. You know, I'm just going to have to guess that they're going to be looking for things like park and rides. And so my guess is that some of the issues around Surfers Beach would lend themselves to look things like park and rides, or a more organized parking on the east side. So, you know, it's not as if we wouldn't, you know, forget about it forever for another project, but it's probably part of the traffic management plan.
I think that I will pass it out.
Dan?
Yes. I just want to thank you, Sarah, and Supervisor Horsley, and Caltrans for coming tonight. This is really good to be all together. So, and I understand that, you know, it's a very complicated process. It's not an easy task. And I have a question about the medians. So, existing along Highway 1, we have some areas that are basically, I guess you would not technically call them a median, but they're median. They're painted out, kind of block out, so to speak, for a left turn to kind of get the traffic. So these are used currently by some people as safe, you know, refuge. I'm asking between that, the painted stripe, the way what you see right at Surfers Beach's example, moving up, having bumps around the little, you know, the red or yellow bumps, you have a little bit more of a car, you know, hit it, they would feel it. But then there's this new divot technology along the double yellow line, where now when you drive over and you pass a car and land, you really feel it. So all those, the small bollards I've even seen, you know, you know, we're talking about arrays. I guess a typical, I've seen a picture of it, typical 6-inch curve. That's what we're focused on. There's no other variety or options or anything. Specifically as far as the speed reduction.
There is a possibility of doing at-grade medians instead of a raised median.
At-grade medians.
At-grade meaning either a painted or a streetscape sort of median, or it wouldn't have you know, the curve with it. So that's a possibility, but it may not be as effective in what we're trying to accomplish with this project, which is more of a traffic calming measure. But that's definitely an option.
Okay, and then that follows in, if we do calm traffic and lower the speed limit, how does that improve, how would that improve congestion? Fewer cars going by per minute. Wouldn't that cause gridlock? You know, on the times when, the weekends when everybody, pumping dust.
Well, you have gridlock?
Pardon?
Well, you already have gridlock?
Yeah, well, we haven't had it until just recently. At least Highway 1, Pacifica, going up, and it's changed drastically the last couple of years. Sometimes we have no gridlock, sometimes we do have incredible gridlock. So the question is, how would lowering the speed, it says up there, congestion safety improvement project study, how would lowering the speed limit improve congestion? It's just a general question.
I'll answer that one.
Yeah.
Lower the speed limit by 5 miles an hour is not going to create congestion. As a matter of fact, studies have shown that, like you speed around 45, 50 miles an hour, you get the maximum capacity of a traffic light. The reason is that people would be flowing at a nice, easy speed and keep the adequate headway. Now, when they start going 65 miles an hour, they tend to have a greater headway, meaning that they bigger separation between vehicles, then the capacity of the lane goes down, actually. Now, of course, like if you drive in LA or San Francisco area, then that kind of defies that logic because people follow each other, one car lane. So, you can always challenge, say, hey, look, Roland doesn't know what he's talking, like the certain lanes can handle 2,200 cars per hour instead of 1,800 because people are following each other, within 20 feet of each other. But, you're not going to see a major reduction in capacity if we go to lower the speed by 5 miles an hour. You can do it. Yeah. And since you touch on speed limit, is that okay that I explain a little more how we set speed limit? Because people always wonder, hey, why don't you lower the speed limit? Well, first of all, there are laws in the California Vehicle Code requires, it dictates how we set the speed limit. It's not really up to us. We are required to go out and collect speed data, meaning that we go out and collect at least 100 vehicles and collect the speed data of 100 vehicles. Then we draw that we got the speed profile, and 85% we draw a line. Now let's say that 85th percentile speed is turned out to be 51.2 miles per hour. Then we round down to 50. Then as an engineer, we have the latitude of lower that further by another 5 miles an hour, but we have to provide some justification. Justification such as is in a residential area, there are a lot of driveways, there are a lot of cross streets, there's high accidents, there's limited sight distance. So those are the justifications that we can use to lower the speed limit. We have to follow that process. It's a federal process. If we don't follow that process, then the speed limit is not legal, meaning that the police department will not be able to enforce the speed. If the police department cannot enforce the speed, then the speed limit is useless. So, because people are very smart now. If someone, we get requests all the time from citizens that got a speeding ticket, first thing they ask is, give me your speed survey. Because without that, they can go to court and challenge the speed limit. So, that's how we, establish speed limit, and we're gonna go through the process and collecting speed data pretty soon. I cannot tell you when because it's not legal to tell you. Because everyone go out there and do 25. And we don't even tell the police department because we don't want the police show up and then start pointing the radar at everybody and slow everybody down. So we go there and collect speed data, we go through the process, we go do a study, and then we go share the information with Sarah, and in one of the future meetings, I can share that information with you. Okay? So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just that our community relies on those openings in the traffic to actually get out and make a left turn. And so if there was one car after another, like you just described, nobody would be able to get out on the highway. They would be stuck on the side streets and have to turn around and go back home. But quick question, has it been considered to, instead of widening the highway, has it been considered to sacrifice possibly the minimum left turn lanes, strategic, the best, maybe second in California, the two top most, I think, needed crosswalks. If we sacrificed the left turn lane in those locations, that would provide room for a raised median, and maybe a solution, has that been considered?
Yeah, so that's what we're considering right now as part of the traffic studies. So we're looking at the turning movements at the intersections and determining where left turn pockets are really needed, and at the other places we could do that. We could sacrifice what is there now.
And then you wouldn't have to widen the highway.
At that location, yes.
Okay.
But if we're talking a long stretch of, say, Moss Beach, where there's the two-way left turn lane in the middle, and you need a left turn lane, say, at California, but you don't need one at Virginia, you know, we could do that. We could use the width from the two-way left turn lane, say, north and south of California, but if we're providing a left turn lane, there is some widening that would have to occur. Just the way that the design would turn out. It would be much less widening, to answer your question.
So-
I think it's the fan on the laptop, unfortunately.
No, it sounds to me like there's a connector that's gotten disconnected and
It's
speaker
got
is
to
being
bump up
fed.
to the water.
Right, check your connectors.
No, it's gonna be at the amp. Where's the amp?
I think it's.
Yeah, nobody has been near the amp. Sorry, everyone. Technical difficulties.
So, you know, the last, I know that, I'm wondering if there's a chance that roundabouts could be opened up for discussion again, because it may solve the problems of, if it is down to 45 miles an hour, and you've got one car after another, you could turn right, make a U-turn and come back with a roundabout, but,
I thought that wasn't in the scope of this project.
So, the county transportation management plan would potentially assess roundabouts.
okay.
So that would be the grander, bigger picture, I guess. So roundabouts are definitely not the low-hanging fruit.
Barry, did you have some, you were going to sit here and ask your question?
Yeah, well, I'll stand next to you. Oh, okay. Anyway, I've just got two quick questions. So the first is I wanted to find out.
Very sorry.
Are we all okay? Yeah, exactly.
You need a comb over there,
They
Dave?
have iced it though.
Didn't want anybody to fall asleep.
You okay down there?
Just have to have everybody's attention.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick. Where specifically are you looking to make crossings safer, and how were those decided upon? Like, so for instance, in one of your slides, you had a photo of two people almost getting nailed at Graywell Cove. But I didn't really see anything addressing that particular crossing. And then conversely, I live in Montera, and 7th Street is one of the streets that you're looking for, and I don't notice a lot of pedestrian traffic there. So that's my first question.
Okay, so to answer your first question, it was about Graywell Cove.
Well, how did you determine where specifically to look at in terms of needing to have safe crossings?
Okay.
How did you determine those?
So we started with a baseline of locations that was scoped by the county based on the last study, and we've gotten some pedestrian counts, and we're verifying those so that our traffic studies that are they're ongoing now will evaluate, like, say, 7th Street versus 8th Street. Where are the pedestrians crossing, and then if they're crossing at 8th Street, we're going to put it at 8th Street. So it's still being
You're
evaluated.
still collecting data in that arena.
We're evaluating the best locations for that.
And Graywell Cove is one of those that's under consideration as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So this is the map, and we have one in the back too, on the easel. But the yellow dots here are the dedicated pedestrian crossings. There's one up at Graywell Cove. There's also left turn pockets, the green dots. There's also one up at Graywell Cove, much
Okay.
needed. And then the raised medians are the stars. Those are the locations that were
Okay, great, thanks.
originally scoped for.
Okay, and then just one other quick one. So my only other question is, are you just looking specifically at foot traffic or also at cars? So for instance, recently I'm driving and I'm coming southbound on Highway 1, and there's a car stopped to turn over the double yellow line to go into the parking lot at Graywell Cove.
Yes.
So clearly, that's a problem.
Yes,
as well.
so if you're going southbound, the left turn pocket would be provided for motorists who want to turn into the parking lot. And similarly, there would be an acceleration lane for motorists leaving the parking lot, going southbound as well. So there have been a lot of rear end accidents at Graywell Cove because motorists are sitting, like you said, in the lane, waiting to turn left. So that left turn pocket would get them off of the main highway, and it would enhance the safety immensely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Aaron, we actually did show it on the slides, but Gray Whale Cove was far less controversial, so we didn't think we had to go through that over again, but it does have the additional lanes, so there's an improvement, better traffic parking management at the, in the parking lot itself.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, since David's busy, I'll have my turn. I had a question on lights. So when you say lights, you mean street lights, and when you say traffic signals, you don't mean those kind of lights, because sometimes I get confused when somebody says, well, we have to have lights at crossings, and I thought they meant the traffic signal kind.
It's the
But lights,
illuminator,
when you just
yeah.
say lights, that only means night lighting, as like street lights.
Correct.
And then if you want to talk about the traffic signals, you'll say specifically that.
We're not proposing any traffic signals.
Well, the
per
beacons
se,
or the
but
push
beacons,
buttons,
exactly.
yeah, those, but they're lights as well.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, there was confusion there for me anyway. So my question, does Caltrans have any regulations on the minimum level of night lighting for pedestrian crossings? And do you have any data that shows how night lighting improves safety? Like how much safer does it make it for pedestrians?
You know, good question. That answer should be, that question should be answered by electrical design. We do have a intersection lighting design. I can go back to the office and look up the information. I do not, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but there's all kinds of studies have done to show the safety benefit of putting intersection lighting. The lighting, because most of the nighttime accident involving vehicles and pedestrians is that the drivers cannot see the pedestrian. Cannot see the pedestrian. So, because not everyone goes out with a flashlight and wearing reflective clothing. And so that's why, the lighting at night brings great safety benefits. Actually, for both the pedestrians and motorists too. Yeah. I can
So-
certainly look up that information.
I've got some data here. This is from a investigation, highway lighting practices and policies. So I'm just going to read a few of these bullet points. Nationwide accident statistics show that more than 50% of fatal collisions occur during the hours of darkness. So because only 25% of travel occurs during the same period, the fatality rate is about 3 times higher at night than during the day. So that it's really important to have lighting at pedestrian crossings. There is a minimum amount of light that you have to have at crossings, for sure. And that's determined during the final design phase. Like Roland said, the electrical engineer will go and design it. They're not going to provide more lights than is necessary, but there is a minimum requirement to provide the visibility for safety for the pedestrians.
Is that just pedestrian fatalities or all accidents 3 times more?
Pedestrian.
So on the subject of merged, what I was told was merged lanes, and now it's called acceleration, whatever, the left turn onto the highway. So you're looking into that. Is there, which seems to me a real straightforward kind of exercise to shift that from one type of left turn to the other. Is that something that could possibly move forward ahead of all these other things and happen sooner? For instance, at Cypress or perhaps a couple others in Moss Beach? Is that possible?
That's a good question. I think it would have to be a separate project.
Well, I mean, Caltrans put in a whole center left turn lane thing up the lighthouse with no CDP, no public input, or anything, just did it. So I mean, I'm just saying, all this would be is change the arrows kind of thing, you know? It wouldn't think it would take so many years.
With 3 fatalities, and that's a lot.
Well, I think we do need to look at the traffic data at the very minimum.
Right.
So that's happening now, and I guess at the end of this study.
Yeah, we could certainly, we could look at that with the traffic data and then approach Caltrans separately about that.
I guess, you know, I'm looking at, because we had thought all along that this was going to be finished at the end of 2015, and then possibly, if there were funding, possibly something in 2016. Now we're looking way further out, and so I'm just sort of like, well, what, this just found out yesterday, and maybe because we didn't know until yesterday that the raised medians required widening. We didn't know that. You know, I mean, I went through both the highway mobility study things, and all this, these treatments were sold, and it sounded great, and nobody said that these complications, I knew the speed was an issue, but not, you know, and I just don't think, you know, I think probably a certain percentage of people would back off on asking for raised medians if that much disruption were involved, you know, and like the question came up about other at-grade medians, you know, you could have rumble strips, you could have contrasting colors and textures or things like that, short of the putting that hazard in the road, and yet still get some safety for the crossing to cross in the middle. And so I guess I'm just looking for, is there some way to pare this down or adjust this or something to shorten the project as a whole, or get some small parts of it sooner? Because this was the low-hanging fruit. This was what, you know, when we came out of the Highway 1 studies and we heard all the comments from the community, and there was controversy on a number of complicated proposals, but the one thing that was clear was, you know, the safety improvements, get something easy done quickly. And so it doesn't seem like this is any idea of what we thought of as quickly. So I don't know if people want to stick with what we were saying last time, or to go full on to all this widening. I don't know what that's going to look like. Maybe that doesn't look so good. So there's that now added to the mix. So,
well, as part of our study, we can recommend, you know, if there's extra low-hanging fruit, we recommend that to be implemented.
Is there any fruit laying on the ground?
Windfalls, you mean?
Right. So, first of all, I apologize for the sound systems problems, but since I missed my slot, I want to build on what Lisa just said and a few other things before you go too much into your answer. I think we would be far better off putting in a little bit of lighting, a couple of painted crosswalks here and there, and get them done this year or next while we look at anything else that's longer term. Because we do have a lot of accidents in Moss Beach. We have a lot of near accidents at 2nd Street and a couple of other places. Let's make it low-hanging fruit and get it done quickly while we study the rest.
Did you have any other questions?
No, everything else, every other question, and that was a non-question, I know, that I had wanted to ask was already asked.
That's an important comment.
Yeah. And I think, and so tying in with that, the idea of, you know, this immediate fruit, whatever. It's like at Cypress, you know, there was a crossing proposed and other things, you know, well, okay, so leave out the crossing there for now, maybe do just the left merge lane, put the crossing in Virginia, just one for now, and, you know, put in some street lights. And so I don't know how you manage this and come up with some alternate proposal, but if there were some really near-term option that you could offer next time, you know, maybe people would pick up on it.
Okay.
So I would like to open this up to the public now, and so your hand I saw first, Sid, you're next, and the people, if you want to start queuing up, or, I mean, rather than we wait while you come up to the podium, you need to come to the microphone.
And the microphone
You need
that
to come
you
up
need
here.
to speak to is this one near the projector.
This,
That one. Yes, don't talk to the one that you're at, Sid. It's this microphone here is what's gonna pick up the recording.
No.
Yeah.
Stand over there.
The one by the projector.
Yeah.
Unplug that.
Get rid of that one.
I have a pretty loud voice, so I
Go
think
for
everybody can hear me.
We can hear you, but I think they want it on the
Oh, I see.
you're a TV star now.
Could I, when you come to speak, could I ask everybody, please, say your name and the community that you're from, please, for the minutes?
It doesn't have extension.
Can I pick this up, or do I have to
No,
bend
no,
over?
Just stand where you are.
Okay, okay. So I just have a technical comment and a suggestion, because it seems to me that from what I've heard, I particularly like, I don't know your name, but I particularly like Lisa's idea about getting something done fairly quickly and perhaps turning some of these left turn lanes into that no-fly zone, if you will, for cars, right? So my comment has to do with the speed study, because it seems to me that so much of what we need to do is going to hinge on the results of that study. And I know you can't tell us when it's going to take place, though I saw from the slide it's going to be by October of 2015.
Yes.
So we don't know.
No, 2014.
2014, I'm sorry. So you might want to cover your ears on this, because you might not want to hear what I have to say, but it just seems to me, Don, that with all of your experience with the Sheriff's Department, that we might be able to arrange for some particular cars to be located between now and October, so that we can help to encourage the traffic to be at speed limit at the minimum, so we can reduce the speed limit down to 45. That was my comment.
I'll second that.
Sid?
You were gonna bring donuts.
Is that donuts for Don, with Don? Sid Young, Moss Beach, actually a Silk Cove resident, so I'm pretty interested about the Cypress intersection especially, but actually have 4 questions, so if you guys want to jot them down as I go, or I could ask them all at once, I mean, whichever. First, one by one. Okay, this one kind of more for Don, I guess, or I'm not sure, but as far as flashing crosswalks, I picked this up about the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, and I guess that's what you said at the last meeting people objected to, but Don's probably familiar with this area of Redwood City down near Costco and Middlefield. Sometimes if you come up from Atherton and do that intersection up to the El Camino, there's a lot of visual camouflaging of pedestrians because there's so much going on in those few intersections. And I noticed that now, and I don't know how recently they put it in, there are actually pedestrian flashing things. I don't know, there's so much going on along that stretch that I don't even know if there's this triangular crosswalk notice, but you can see it as you're driving along. You'll see the lights in the roads flashing, and then you can look up and see if there's a pedestrian, because it's quite congested through there and visually disorienting because of all the signs. It's a big commercial area. So I was wondering if that would be, preferable to this community as opposed to having great big flashing signs out on the highway, just a pedestrian flashing crosswalk. So that's one question. I don't know, Don, if you wanted to weigh in on that, if you're familiar.
They're not, I'm familiar with them. They're not particularly unusual, or they're not particularly new. They're in a lot of communities, and
They're useful, aren't they?
They're what?
They're
useful.
beneficial.
They are, yeah. But you still need to have overhead lighting too.
Oh, I see. Okay. So then that was one question, if that had been considered at all. And then the other thing was not a Caltrans issue, but what we talked about at the Fairlawn View meeting is if the county had looked into a right turn lane at the end of the street exiting to go south onto Highway 1 at Cypress. As you leave tonight, you'll see the big dip or, the culvert.
Well, we are well aware of the problems of queuing on Cypress, but I don't think there's enough room to widen there. But that's one of the reasons of having I call them pocket lanes or acceleration lanes.
Right.
So if they could get out onto going northbound, then you can free up the right turn lane.
I will definitely agree to that. And then third question was, since the Big Wave project study just came out again for the revised project there, that's gonna also affect Cypress as well as all of Highway 1. And I know you guys are still working on the rezoning of Plan Princeton, but all of the visitor-serving things are gonna obviously increase traffic, and so would Big Wave. So my question is, was any of this study considering part of the potential that Big Wave someday get built and then you may have to redo everything again for their extremely extra traffic flow, because it's now down to 644 parking spaces from 7-something, but there's also, the wellness center is gonna have extra, like 64 other parking spots as well. So obviously there's gonna be cars in those parking spaces someday. They're all gonna be either coming out through the harbor or coming out through Cypress. So that was, if the question was, is the Big Wave project part of this study, or are you just gonna kick the football down the field till it gets approved?
So we, the environmental document just came out, we'll be reviewing that as
Okay.
well.
And I didn't actually have time to look at the whole thing today, but did they already have to do a traffic study to get that new one, or, because their last traffic study was like really flim-flam?
I haven't read it yet.
Okay,
so.
I just didn't have a chance. Okay, last question was, this has more to do with Surfers Beach, and I was, 2 questions really. Has anti-jaywalking enforcement ever been considered there?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. but
And that's because it's
Right.
legal, as the CHP has answered over and over again.
All right. Well, it's nice to know it's illegal. If I ever get
No,
pulled.
it is totally illegal.
It is legal.
Yes.
It's nice to know it's
There is
legal.
no,
So if you build it, they will come. So it seems to me that the recent Highway 1 widening right across from Sam's was really not adequately vetted. I don't remember seeing any public meeting about it or anything, so the way it is, it still allows parking along the, shall we say, county side of Highway 1, whereas the other side is still a red curb, and you know, you're not allowed to park on the side that Half Moon Bay owns along the cherry stem there. So that to me encourages and enables jaywalking. It just does. So I just wanted to know if anybody wanted to weigh in on that and why the Sam's overflow parking lot strip over there wasn't more vetted.
Well, first, that's in the city of Half Moon Bay, so you'd have to ask Half Moon Bay.
Well, it
And
was
the other
widened
side,
on
on the other side, we did stop their project, we did require a CDP, they had to do an archaeological study, so they did obtain a CDP, and that was actually delayed for almost a year. to
But
get
it
that.
was never a public meeting, right?
There was a public meeting at the Midcoast Community Council, and we commented on the project. However, our comments were ignored.
After they started it, they got it. Okay, thank you, Lisa.
before it started.
Okay.
Leonard Warren El Granada. I have a whole bunch of comments. I'm just going to go through in the order I wrote them down, which may not seem to make any sense, but otherwise I'm going to leave out something. So the first thing I want to do is remind everybody, particularly the 4 people at this end of the table, this is semi-rural. This is not Redwood City. Semi-rural. Now can I read what I wrote? The acceleration lanes that Caltrans does, I've been told be nice. They're not well done. They're very, very badly done. Almost all of them are way too short. Most of them are too narrow. And most of them are hard to see from the cross streets. So they need to be wider and longer. Look at the one at Coral Reef. The one at Coral Reef is literally this long in both directions. It's ridiculous. And I'm going to say it again, Michigan left turns. I think most of us could live with 45. When you start going below 45 speed limit, you're going to get a lot more pushback. And as somebody previously said, signals do not improve traffic flow. Anytime you put in anything that stops traffic, you reduce the capacity of the roadway, period. End of discussion, particularly when you start putting in left turn arrows in all directions. Then you cut the capacity at the intersection to basically a quarter of what it is with no signal at all. For Moss Beach, because the side streets are so close together, I really think the solution to Moss Beach is a mid-block median, which then doesn't interfere with left turn lanes and gets the pedestrians out of the place where you have 8 or 16 different turning movements that they have to watch out for. So I really, really think that in Moss Beach, you need to look at mid-block medians. And I said this before, I'm going to ask for it again. You really need to do a much broader community survey about roundabouts and see if it's more than a handful of people that are against the roundabouts. Because I think you're going to find out that it's really a very small number of people that are against roundabouts. And as far as the medians, you could do the painted medians tomorrow, because I went out in 1997 or 8, when the Coronado signal was starting construction. I went out with a tape measure at 1 o'clock in the morning, because I only had a 12-foot tape measure, and I measured the highway, and it's 42 or 43 feet. So
Leonard, if you don't have a question, your time's up. I mean, the clock is run. Do you have a question?
you let Sid go way.
They were answering her questions.
I have 4 questions.
All right, well, on light standards, can you do lighting at the crossings where the light standards are basically like this high? It's done in some places, but I don't know that Caltrans has that note in their tune. But you know, that I would like to hear an explanation why you have to have 20-foot high light standards, because that's what's not acceptable in front of El Granada, is the high light standards. And I'd really like to hear, again, your description of the roadway width, because I add up your numbers, I only get 34 feet, and the highway in El Granada is 42 feet or 43 feet, not counting what they did at Sam's, where it's probably 50 feet now. So at Surfers Beach, it's 42 feet, which is 8 feet wider than adding up your numbers. Please explain that.
As it's been just pointed out to me, Leonard, that we will evaluate roundabouts through our transportation management plan, but I know they're controversial.
But I really think do a broad survey and ask
Well,
for that.
we'll look at them through the transportation management plan.
Can I interject something very briefly? Somebody just reported that there's a black Camry out there with its headlights on.
David Musgrave, Seal Code, Moss Beach, and Leonard, look kids, Parliament, Big Ben, roundabouts. European vacation. It's a reference to European vacation. Anyway, let me cover a couple things here. One is short-term freebie solutions that can be done right now, which I think everyone wants to hear and is interested in. When we moved here, I'd like a return to the past. Shoulder parking along Highway 1, illegal car parking of cars for sale and large commercial vehicles along the highway didn't exist. And that obviously impacts visibility, it impacts crossing. It's unsafe and there's restrictions against it. I'd like to see them enforced. When we moved here, landscape requirements were enforced. So for example, El Gran Amigo, you couldn't just turn at any willy-nilly point off the highway into it. Same thing at the Chevron station. There was actual proper landscaping. There's a requirement on the books. It's not being enforced. That would basically dramatically change where cars turn in and off the highway. And it's a huge safety issue. Back when we moved here, the RV parking that was taking place on the west side of Highway 1 at Surfers Beach didn't exist. That's a revocable lease. Maybe it's time to explore revoking it. In fact, I understand there's some controversy about whether there was a true coastal permit done on it, and it's worth taking a second look. Tunnel crossing is a great example of what not to do and what the community absolutely does not want and does not need. So let's take a note out of that playbook and know what not to do as far as pedestrian crossings. And lastly, light poles. They may be safe for pedestrians. I don't know, I haven't seen the data, but while I was sitting in the audience, I looked up the statistics on injury and fatalities with motor vehicles, and they're quite high. In fact, the only thing that kills motorists more are trees as far as fixed object collisions than light poles, especially at highway speeds. So, okay, great, you're going to save some on the pedestrian side. You're more than account for that in motor vehicle fatalities. That's it, thank you.
Hi, Bill Keel, Moss Beach. Thank you all for coming out here and spending your time with us again. We'll go through this. I just want to reiterate a lot of what was already said ahead of me. To the first gentleman who spoke about asking for the sheriff to enforce the speed limits, I was sitting there thinking the same thing. I know you can't tell us when that's going to happen, but you very seldom see people pulled over for speeding. And I know just from the years living here that nobody does 50 through Morse Beach. They do at least 60 or more, especially once you're past the approaching the curb by the lighthouse. I also, and this is to the Roland, I'm sorry, at Caltrans. This is just something very basically illogical when you show the chart where it's 45 all through the slide and into Montera, and then the speed limit goes up to 50 for Morse Beach and El Granada, where you have the most amount of pedestrian cross traffic, and then it drops back down again to 45. It's almost like Caltrans is trying to play an evil joke, and I know you're not. And I know you're data driven, but just somewhere in that data, let's add some logic and just common sense. Common sense would be like really good, and it just doesn't make sense to have a 50 there. So if we can't get you to do it only through changing data, then we have to ask you to, and I apologize to all the people that live out here and still commute. I don't want to do this, but really come down hard for the next 6 months or whatever before we know they're doing the test, and make sure people are doing the right speed limit. I personally have taken it upon myself to drive 5 miles underneath the speed limit from now until I know the study is done. Just to bring it down. Half of you hate me, half of you like me. That's what's living on the coast side, isn't it? Thank you very much. So the other thing I want to support what Lisa and Laura and actually I think the whole Midcoast Community Council has been saying, and that is it has been 10 years. It's actually been over that. The study started in 2009. I first started asking when my daughter was 3 months old and she's going to graduate from UCLA next year. I mean, that's a little bit long for a safe crosswalk at California. And they're having people killed there over that time. You mentioned something about, well, if you don't do the raised median and you just do like a landscape median but at grade, you could probably get that through quicker. I'd say go for it. Let's do it. Let's get it done, in August. And then still go ahead and go for the higher quality, higher statistically proven safe crossing 5 years from now. But there were mothers with young kids at the last meeting, and I kind of jokingly said, even if this got agreed on tonight, your kids will be in high school before you see it. And lo and behold, 2019, the smart kids will be in high school by then. So 2 things. Speed it up for the real, easy things to do. A safe crossing, even if it's just painted, even if it has a little bit of a light there, I don't think anybody's going to get, blinded by the night lights. And then slow down the speed limit. Those 2 quick things you could do, now. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Adrian. I live in Montera. It's nice to meet all you guys tonight and the rest of my neighbors. My one comment is a question about the lights, technical. And I cross the highway quite a bit, so I want safety as well. I also live right on 14th and Highway 1, so I like the darkness. Is there anything that these lights could be timed so that a pedestrian have to press a button to have them on so that they weren't on all night? Is there anything that kind of balance safety, but also have the night sky that we're used to having here?
The lighting would enhance the safety for pedestrians as well as motorists. So we mentioned the dimmable lights earlier. That's definitely a possibility, but if we install lights, it wouldn't do much good to turn them off.
But you're talking about having lights installed so pedestrians can cross, not just
Beacons,
traffic.
yeah. So the push button beacons would be activated by the pedestrian. So is that what you're?
That's what I'm saying, so the light wouldn't be on all night, but it
No,
would
no,
be
no.
as needed
It
by
would
the
only
pedestrian.
start flashing when you push the button, if you're crossing.
Oh, so that is something you're looking to?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 2 lights, right? There's the beacon light and then the road light. The road light that would shine white light on the road would be on all night long, possibly dimmed at a later discussion.
Exactly.
So there would be a light on all night, in addition to brighter when pedestrians need it.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ed Love. I live in Lost Beach, and I guess I'm wondering what the problem is with widening. They widened it at Sam's, as everybody's talked about. a relatively short period of time, even though they didn't have the proper permits, and it dragged out longer than it needed to. So can you explain why widening is, you know, a big deal?
We're gonna follow the rules.
Oh.
And do it properly, yeah, and do the, you know, the environmental studies, they take some time.
Okay. Second question is, these items all seem like Band-Aids, actually, much needed Band-Aids. And my question is there a long-term plan for Highway 1? And if so, does anybody know what it is? And, what's the... I'm asking anybody who has an answer.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by long-term. It'd be like if you're Surface Beach, is it gonna move eastwards and things of that sort? I'd have to ask Caltrans. I don't know if they have a long-term plan for it. They have right-of-ways on both sides, but.
Oh, yeah, the right-of-way is huge. You can see
Yeah, it is.
where the utility poles are, that's basically the right-of-way.
Exactly, but as far as I do not know if they have a long-term plan.
Well, as far as, well, I don't know about Caltrans, but I mean, have you seen the Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Improvement Study?
No, I haven't.
Go to the midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. There's a page on Highway 1 issues and projects, and you can look at the plan. There's concept plans for, this happened in several workshops and was approved in 2012. And there are concept plans for the highway, and there are more complex treatments there, such as the roundabouts and things that people talked about, and possibly a overcrossing at the lighthouse, but those are longer term projects. This was the near term project. So there is that, and then also the transportation management plan, or what they're calling now Connect Coastside, there's a website for it. That's getting underway, and basically that's more like area planning for build out for the coast side. So that would be, you know, some real long, these aren't specifically projects, but it's like, what the heck are we gonna do with all these people kind of thing, and plan for the highway. So there's that's just getting underway.
I'm on the General Plan Advisory Committee for Half Moon Bay, for the new general plan. Does Half Moon Bay and the Midcoast Council and Caltrans, do they coordinate? Because they have a circulation plan as part of the new general plan.
Yeah, Half Moon Bay will be involved, and I should say this will be the county, Half Moon Bay.
Right.
And
they are part of the transportation management plan. It is coordinated with them.
Now, if anybody would like to see a nice piece of road that I travel on usually about once a week, Sand Hill Road between 280 and Camino Real. Now, there's a wonderful example of 2 lanes in each direction, a bike lane in each direction, lots of nicely landscape medians, and traffic moves right along, and it's a great piece of road. And that should be the model, I think, for Highway 1.
Yeah, but it's wide.
Well, it's probably got less right-of-way than Highway 1 does now. Check it out sometime. If you're not familiar with it, take a ride, take a look at it. Thank you.
Carl May, Moss Beach. I want to ask everybody in the audience and the people up here to not always base all of their thinking and all of their projections and so forth on technical studies, but to base them on what you know about this area as a longtime resident. You have, by your daily travels up and down the coast, a wealth of data, empirical data, to be brought to these things. There are a couple of things based on experience that I might bring up quickly. In Montero, we went over a year hassling about the suicide lane Caltrans wanted to put into Montero to make it 3 lanes wide instead of 2 lanes wide. A lot of people will still not use that particular lane in Montero. But also, as part of that project, we were told repeatedly the speed limit could not be lowered to 45, and they did. Okay, so, and the traffic was whizzing through there, and it got made 45. And when you get out of Montera into a less congested area, going by the Sprouts fields and heading north, they maintain a 45 there, and traffic used to go 60 there all the time. So these things, the rules and so forth may be in place, but a lot gets done. And if you keep the pressure on, you can get it done. The other thing is a much more recent thing. In Pacifica, they're widening and lengthening the bridge over San Pedro Creek right now. They went round and round on that and did a lot of studies and were assured by the best consultants the city of Pacifica could hire, and with the agreement of Caltrans, that the delays would be about 30 seconds that were created at that detour. And that's an exact quote. That's not me making it up. As we know, we are now suffering on nice weekends up to 30-minute delays. If you head north, okay. Just a couple of quick things. Roundabouts suck, and there is not community consensus on them. And I would like to see a potential quicker schedule for the easier to implement things. We have a wide enough highway in Montera where a kid was killed. We have a wide enough highway in Lost Beach where a kid was killed. Is there some way of phasing this thing instead of holding us hostage to Graywell Cove or whatever, where it's more difficult to widen the highway?
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Katie Jager, and I live in Lost Beach. And I want to voice my support for getting something safe crossing done in a timely manner. And also, I'd like to voice my support in widening the highway. I think that's would be a good idea. And then along with that, I was wondering if there are any plans with widening the highway of adding a bike lane between Montera and Moss Beach to El Granado where you can pick up the coastal trail. I've been riding my bike, I've been riding with my son along Airport Boulevard, and I have to say the scariest part is Cypress because cars go very fast on Cypress. And it's just a small portion, but it's scary. And then on Airport, it seems wide enough, but cars really go fast there, and I don't think they expect to see bikers. So I would like to see a bike lane on Airport or Highway 1.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Liz Murphy, and I live in Moss Beach. And I just have a question. I was looking at the map and some of your literature, and I'm wondering why the pedestrian crossing is going to be at Cypress and not a little bit further north where Moss Beach doesn't have much of a downtown, but there's a gas station and a Tuckeria, and then across the street there's a market and a post office and a park. And at Cypress there's nothing. And I'm wondering why the pedestrian crossing is at Cypress.
There's also a crossing was proposed at Virginia and California.
Okay,
too.
I only saw the one on the map says
no,
Cypress.
There's definitely one in downtown. That would probably be the most important place. We only have one.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just to elaborate, we are looking at the pedestrian counts to determine the best locations for these crossings. If there's no pedestrian traffic, we're not going to put a crossing there.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Hi, my name's James Garchon from Montera. I have a couple questions, actually. One is, have we considered as part of the study pedestrians walking alongside Highway 1? I've noticed that since the tunnel project went in and the signals that are in now, there's a wealth of people on busy weekends that travel up and side down Highway 1 with their zero shoulder, not 2-foot shoulder, but zero shoulder. And that seems to me to present, from common sense, a really bad situation. And I see that along the bridges and so forth, north of the lighthouse and all up and down the highway. Is that part of this plan? Is that not part of this plan?
It is not. We are aware of it. Actually, what our thoughts were, we knew that the parking lots would be fairly small, but on the Pacifica side, we intended to have a trail that would come up from Pacifica And we actually had the funding for it in 2011, but the owner decided that the assessed value that we set, that was set not by us, but by the city and him, by an independent appraiser, he decided that it wasn't worth $360,000, but it's worth over $1 million. And we cannot give somebody $1 million for a property that's worth, for an easement that's worth $360,000. So that kind of stopped that, although Pacific is still working on it. Then there's the Green Valley Trail that goes from Gray Whale Cove. So the idea was that we were going to use those parking lots and those trails to take pedestrians to the Devil Slides, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, I see this. I see this all the time.
And those are, we're making pretty good progress on Green Valley Trail. We've talked to the property owner there, the Caltrans got an easement by going for eminent domain. We think we're having a little bit more luck. We might name something after the, if we have to do something. We're having a little bit more luck, I think, dealing with the property owner. We need to have an easement to be able to create that trail. But I think long-term, we're probably also going to have to figure out some kind of a shuttle service. Pacifica's got a shuttle, and we'll probably have to do the same thing on the southern portal, so that people are not walking in the highway. But we're not going to widen the highway. I know it's an issue.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were implementing plans to.
Well, we know it's an issue. We are with those two trails. That was part of our thought, was that would take it off the highway, but I think the other, that may not be sufficient. We may have to also come up with a shuttle.
Another question I have for you is the county required as a part of this to follow some sort of standards in terms of ambient lighting? This kind of goes back to a question we heard earlier. A lot of the residents really value the night sky and the ocean, and by introducing a lot of light pollution into the area, probably would disrupt people. I love the idea of lights that come on as needed for pedestrians, and if this is truly to make it safe for pedestrians, A, are required to follow some sort of lighting standards about introducing noise, light pollution in ambient light, and B, have we considered doing dimmer, or not dimmers, but turning on and off the ambient light as necessary?
Well, we did have lots of lighting that we sort of basically didn't go over very well last time, so we pulled it all out. And but nevertheless, I think if we're gonna, and we've heard from the last audience that they really wanted center dividers and center islands, and so you can't have center islands without lighting. The only thing I can say about the lighting, well, first of all, there isn't any legal or county standard for lighting, except that if you're going to have a center meeting, you got to have it lit. Otherwise, you're going to end up with you're going to cause collisions. We don't want to do that. But you can't. We're trying to be as sensitive to that as possible. We don't really want to add a lot of light poles or light standards throughout the coast. But if there's an intersection where there are going to be pedestrians, and if we're going to have a center divider, then that's what we have to do. You have to have lighting. You can't very well, just turn it on and it goes off in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But
and I would elaborate on that. This project, moving forward, is going to be looking at all types of alternative lighting to limit the trespassing of light. So I mentioned earlier the environmental studies. There's a visual impact analysis that's performed, and lighting is one of them. Any additional signage, those are all the visual impacts that are evaluated. So it's a possibility there could be, different types of lighting proposed. There's more decorative lighting. There's the conventional overhead lighting, LED lights that you guys are familiar with. So it's all being evaluated, I guess, as part of this study.
And I have one final question. What other alternatives are there in areas where obviously the road can't be widened, where there's erosion control problems in other areas? And I know that some of those locations are on our list here. What are the other alternatives besides that, that A, are being considered, or B, are even possible? Yeah, that's it.
I just had a follow-up comment to the shuttle.
It was actually a question. I hope for an answer.
Well, I guess an alternative to the raised medians, right? Is that what you're specifically talking about? Okay, well, an alternative to the raised medians would be what we presented at the June meeting, which was the flashing beacons. That would not require any widening, and it would be a lot quicker to implement as well. So,
Or at-grade medians, you were saying?
or at grade medians, yeah.
I have a request around this. You know, we're talking about highway widening, but we have no clue what this looks like or how much wider we're talking. In your next presentation of material, it'd be really helpful to have an understanding of what that means.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or even before the next presentation, if you could just send Lisa what the layout of the roadway would have to be and we'll put it on the website.
Okay.
Neil, did you have something?
Don't be waiting.
Because,
I just had a
You already
follow-up.
spoke, oh, all right.
Oh, were you ahead?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
No, if you were.
No.
Somebody come.
Give your name. Yeah, I'm Steve Schneider from Montera, and the shuttle only takes care of the pedestrian traffic. The problem that we have also, particularly from Pacifica all the way up through, at least up through Montera, is people on bicycles. And they're on that, and there really isn't, I mean, somebody's gonna get whacked. It's just, it's frightening, actually.
You ever drive 84?
Sorry?
You ever drive 84?
I have, not recently.
Yeah, well, you have bicycles on that coming down at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And there are some tragic.
Yeah.
That's just as narrow with the really hairpin turns.
So is there a solution for getting the bikes off the highway and maybe onto the trail?
No, actually, well, that's part, well, we would hope that it's a multimodal trail so that you get the bicycles off. I agree with you, it's very narrow there. It is, it's very narrow. I can just leave it at that. But that's what we wanted to do, was have that site as a multimodal trail. I think once you get south of that, then once you get south of Devil's Slide, then or into the tunnel, then it's better after that.
Yeah.
But that's part of Highway 1 is very narrow.
Right.
Anybody else?
Neil Merleys, Moss Beach. Thanks for coming again. Please get us a crosswalk in Moss Beach and Montera before 2020. Please. And if you put it in Moss Beach, please don't put it in Cypress, put it in Virginia, because that's where everybody crosses now and probably where we need it. It would be nice to have one crosswalk in the community first so people can see how they like it. And then maybe we could put in another one someday if people want it, but at least let's just put in one before 2020. And I also want to say thank you for the Moss Beach Park bathroom. I went away on vacation and magically the bathroom fairy was gone, so I figured I better go on vacation again. The crosswalk fairy.
It only took us a couple of years to get it in.
So thank you very much.
Dog's not the bathroom fairy. Just so you know. Champagne.
Hi, Maureen Hawkins, Moss Beach. I'm sorry, I didn't come to the first meeting, but at this meeting, I still haven't heard how you're gonna help me to get from Cypress to go north on Highway 1. You talked about an acceleration lane. I don't understand how that could help me. But what I'm thinking in the process is, when you talked about that dip, we're really backing up on Cypress, 4 to 6 to 8 cars deep. And that's because people can't make a left. Where that broken road is, I think that's still counting. Could you please fix that so that what I do is I make a right and go to the hospital turn, make a U-turn, or go around the back way to come out, rather than waiting for all those cars. Because especially when people come from Moss Beach Distillery and other issues, walking their dogs, they just can't get out quick enough. So if I could scoot that way, that would be extremely helpful. Besides my suggestion, what do you have for me coming on Cypress, making a left? We don't need a crosswalk there. I've been coming here for many years. There's hardly ever a pedestrian. but we do need to make a left.
To leave Cypress.
Yes, to leave Cypress to get onto Highway 1.
Yeah, northbound, I think this came up strongly at the last meeting, and it's still here strongly, and they said that they're working on that. I think that's probably the highest on the list for.
Could you fix though the road there, and I don't know whose job it is, just give us like a mini right turn, a mini acceleration to go south. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question, and that is, really quickly, I assume with not a lot of residents and a lot of injuries and other things, and the quickness of the turn lane that got put in at the lighthouse, how fast could we also put in a crosswalk there, or some sort of small, in-road lighting or something for pedestrians to happen, and have there been any serious objections or resistance to doing that there?
What's the intersection?
Across the lighthouse.
16th.
There's a crossing.
Yeah. It actually became more difficult after the left turn lane was put in. So we will have to review the left turn lanes to put in a crossing there.
Sarah, did you forget? I didn't know if you were talking.
Your question was, is there a way to expedite that crossing?
Yeah, that's James' question.
Okay, so I would just echo what we've been saying throughout this discussion, is the rapid rectangular flashing beacon or some variation of that would be the easiest to implement. If we're looking at widening, it slows down exponentially. So.
Oh, I just didn't know if you heard Dave, your comment.
So my comment, which, and this came up at the last meeting, so I'm sure you heard it, was simply that after the left turn lanes went in, it became far more difficult to put in a crosswalk at that location.
Why was that?
Because the only place the crosswalk can go now is in the middle of the left turn lanes.
How about on the other side of the lighthouse?
Yeah, so that was proposed as well, to move it up to 14th on the other side of the berm or something like that.
Or even on the opposite side of the same intersection with the lighthouse? I mean, there's left turn lane only exists on one side.
No, it's two-way now. That's the problem.
You saying that you can't put a crosswalk on 16th Street now? But
It's
on
more
the sign.
difficult after the reconfiguration for left turn lanes.
So why is 16th Street listed on the sign?
Well, because it's still needed there. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic crossing there.
We're still evaluating the crossing. I think what you're saying is that the left turn lane that was recently implemented made it more difficult for us to do our evaluation. It's less feasible now than it was before the left turn lanes are. I would agree with that. But we could look at different configurations at that location to address this.
Does anybody else want to come up and ask questions?
Can I just scoot up here?
Yeah.
I just want to thank you all. I'm Fran Pollard El Granado, and thank you all for coming, and especially Mr. Caltrans over here. I'm so happy to see somebody from Caltrans, so hope you come again. And we've just, I'm talking about reinstituting our Burnham Strip Committee in El Granada to get together and come up with some solutions for that area that we want to see in El Granada. So I hope we can do that, and we'll submit it. And I've submitted letters years ago when you first started. Although I don't think Caltrans ever came to any of those meetings when we were first studying the highway. We've submitted letters on what we'd like to see in front of El Granada. And as far as parking, has anyone ever, could you work with the Harbor District or something? All that parking up at the harbor, and it's empty all the time. Why can't some of the parking go up there? You just need a sign to say parking here, and it's hundreds of parking spaces there that sits empty most of the time. I think that would be a big solution, but anyway, we'll talk among ourselves and submit a letter or something, okay? Thank you.
Lynn Erickson from El Granada. This actually is a question about the Lighthouse Crossing. Now, do you represent an effort sponsored by the community? And you're from Caltrans?
Yes.
But what the community has asked in that particular intersection area is if you could look at the county roads, which are 14th, 16th, and St. Carlos, and your crossings, and come up with a plan that integrates the two. Although you're sitting next to each other, I have the feeling that you look at it as a highway turn project, and you look at it as maybe a crossing project. But we've often felt that if you would look at that area together, you could craft a much better solution. Is there any way to make that happen?
Yeah, so we're looking at traffic data for intersections throughout the entire corridor.
Right.
And we don't have counts at all of them, but what we do have, we will be evaluating and adjusting the scope.
But my question is to architect the terms. It would appear you need to use county DPW, which handles the roads off of Highway 1, and Highway 1 itself to craft a good solution there, which means you talk together on a single project. Is there a way to make that
To
happen?
clarify what he's saying, essentially you have Highway 1 here, Carlos Street, and 16th Street, and what a couple people proposed is essentially blocking off access at 16th Street and requiring everything to go to Carlos Street. So instead of having two through streets there, you have one, and how do you combine those two to make a future project? Correct me if I'm wrong, if that's what you're saying.
Wow, Nicholas. That way makes a big buck.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right. You want to wrap this up?
Can I just say, first of all, I appreciate everybody coming, and I appreciate your comments, and I apologize if we cannot answer all of your questions, but that doesn't mean that we don't take them into consideration and go back and maybe refine our project, but I do want to just appreciate all your comments, and it is very helpful for us to figure out, what really is doable, because we don't want to do something that the community doesn't want. So, and we try to figure out what is it that, and I heard tonight that let's try and find some intermediate, faster things that don't have to wait until your kids are graduating from college. So I understand that. So we'll go back and work again. I want to really thank the gentleman from Caltrans. One of the things, the last public meeting we had, we heard loud and clear. We don't want a lot of lights. We don't want all, light pollution. We don't want this to look like Menlo Park or Redwood City. We want it to be, this is a different area. And we also heard very clear, we want to see Caltrans at the table with us. And so that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your comments. And even if we didn't give you a good answer, and that's probably true, we didn't give a good answer, that doesn't mean we don't take your comments to heart and keep them as part of our process and look back and refine our potential solutions. And in any case, again, thanks.
Before you go, if you want to be in touch on future meetings like this, and you're afraid you might miss out, you want to get an email reminder, sign in on the sign-in sheet with your email legibly.
And one more thing, I just want to mention again that if you are interested in Midcoast issues, the single best place that you can go for information, this is not a self-serving announcement, it's coming from an empirical point of view, the best possible place you can go is the Midcoast Community Council webpage. And that, again, it's not self-serving, it's because all of the documents are there, all of the information, all of the history. There's no one place you can go to get any better source of information.
I have to ask a question.
And I want to thank our consultant for staying for being here tonight too. So.
Can you tell us what the next step is that's going to happen in about when? After you take all this material back?
What is that slide?
So we have, I have
Sheriff's cars are going to be on
So there will be a draft report later this year, about November timeframe, and we're going to have another workshop. We don't want to force it before the holidays, so it's probably going to be in January, early 2015.
Okay, thank you.
Did we find out who did the traffic study a couple months ago on Highway 1?
That was the county. That was the county. That was the transportation.
We did some traffic counts.
Oh, okay.